Very good morning to all of you, and it's really very glad to see a full house today, this morning, and we have the honor of hosting an accomplished and inspiring guest, Dr. Anand Deshpande, who has graciously accepted our invitation and visit InApp as part of our year-long 25th anniversary celebrations. Welcome, sir. Dr. Deshpande is the founder, chairman, and managing director of Persistent Systems, one of India's most successful software services companies. He is a distinguished scholar, completed his BTech from IIT Kharagpur, then followed by a master's and PhD from Indiana University. And beyond his entrepreneurial success, Dr. Deshpande serves as an advisor to several Government of India organizations, and also is deeply committed to nurturing innovation and growth. Through a foundation called Diasera Foundation, he actively supports upcoming companies accelerating their journey to success. On a personal note, I had the privilege of attending a workshop led by Dr. Deshpande at IIT Mumbai. That experience profoundly impacted me, and I found myself drawing inspiration from him, much like the legendary character Eklavya from Mahabharata. Learning and growing under the guidance of a mentor from afar, through his talks, interviews, and insights. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Anand Deshpande. Sir, we are eager to hear your thoughts and learn from your wisdom. May I now invite you to the stage to share your insights to us. Welcome, sir.
Let me congratulate InApp and all of you for having experienced 25 years. It's a big honor. How many of you have been here for more than 20 years?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, pretty good. Good to see you having survived in a company that long, because that's not very common in the tech industry. So it's good to see so many of you here. How many of you have been here for less than 5 years? That's a good number here as well. Can I get my slides on this, please? Yeah. So, again, I was chatting with some of you, and then they suggested that I'm talking to a very large portion of the company. So, many of you here are part of the company and you're involved in many aspects of the company. So, I thought instead of giving some yarn about what should companies do, I thought I'd spend some time trying to explain to you how you should navigate your professional career. So that's what I'm planning to do today. But I want to make this very interactive, so feel free to interrupt, ask questions, or stop me, or whatever else, because this is more for you. So I don't want to necessarily just do a one-sided lecture, but I'd like to have a kind of a discussion with you. Before I get started, do you have any questions that you want me to definitely cover today? Anything you would like me to talk about? I'm putting you on the spot, but is there anything specific that you thought
I would like to hear about the impact of DNA.
Yes. Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's get started with this, and then maybe I can connect my. Let's see how it goes. But I will share my ideas and then. So can you just play the PDF rather than the Google slides? because otherwise these points are a lot. I think you're playing Google slides, right? Don't convert it to slides. Just play raw PDF. No, but if you open it in Google Slides, then it will feel a little odd. Because then all these fonts will do whatever. Otherwise, you have to play from that. But they're not letting you do it. Can you play from Masterclass?
Yes.
Okay, while this is coming up, just very briefly, I'm not the CEO of the company of the last 5 years. I'm the chairman. And I have a full-time CEO who runs the business. So I've been doing many other things outside of work, so, outside of persistent maybe. So again, this is a little older deck, so there are some things that are a little dated out there. But I have been working a lot on entrepreneurship and trying to get jobs to happen at scale. So I run a foundation called the Foundation, where we focus on nano entrepreneurs, very small businesses, 5 lakh to 1 crore. And then the second orbit program, which is what referred to, and also some of you have attended as well. There, the intention was that company growth happens as a sequence of S curves. So you do some things, you see your growth, and then and then you have to do something different from the first orbit to the second orbit. And that change requires you to do very different kinds of things. What works in one orbit actually doesn't work in the second. What works in second doesn't work in third. What works in third doesn't work in fourth. So this transition is actually very difficult for companies to make. And this is one topic that I've been talking about. And that's a workshop I did at IIT Bombay where the children had come. So that is one of the things. So some of the craziness that you see right now, or perhaps that you see, may have been reduced by some particulars that I did. Which may have caused some anxiety here. But I'm happy to answer questions about my theory behind that. But instead of talking too much about that theory, I thought it would be good if I shared a little bit about what we should do. Actually, if they connect my computer, it would be very good.
Shiva, I've shared a PDF with you.
Yes, yes.
It is opened in Acrobat.
Yeah. If you open Acrobat, it should not have this problem. If you open it in Google likes to convert everything to Google Slides. And then all the fonts can go here. So all the work that has gone into building these fonts can affect it. How many of you here are programmers? Yeah, that's maybe a little better. But okay, fine. It's all right. We'll just see. Okay. So let me ask you another question. How many of you here are born after 2000? So there are several of you who were born in the last century as well. But just very obvious demographics, it's very clear to say that most of you will live past 80 and many of you will live past 50. So this is the reality. If that is going to happen, you'll also notice that you are one amongst 25 million people in India. So every age in India, there are 25 million. And then the last point here is that your career is not really a sprint, it's more a marathon. And the reason is you have to work beyond 75. There is no way you can retire early. So those of you who are starting career now at 25 will have to work for another 50 years, so till 2075. And the problem is that if you think about it, rate of change is exponential. Right? So whatever you have learned so far probably will not last for too long. More importantly, there aren't that many companies that live that long also. You will outlive companies by now. So it's good to see that you're celebrating 25 years here. But in general, the life of companies is getting shorter and shorter. So lifelong employment is really not kind of going to be that feasible in the long term. And as you would notice, and especially in the context of AI, the effort for the same work is going down significantly. So whatever required 100 people to do in the past, perhaps we could do it with maybe 10, 15, 20 people, whatever. So the effort for the same work is going down. So as a consequence of that, companies providing lifetime employment, you cannot start with that assumption that you will join a company and you can live there or work with them for the rest of your life. Because you don't know, company may not survive, the job you do may not survive. A lot of different kinds of things might happen, and that's really a possible problem. The other thing that you will notice is that, with Uber coming in, this was a thing where people had their own, especially in the US, you don't need to be registered as a cab separately. So people would work during the day and the evening they would just take an Uber thing and go around doing this. So people were doing multiple gigs at the same time. So this kind of stuff is starting to happen in a big way, and one of the examples, again this one is shows Chris Gale here. So Chris Gale, if you ask him what team does he play for, it's kind of a very hard question because he plays for at least 8 to 10 different teams at the same time, meaning not on the same day, but during one season he'll be with an Indian IPL team, and he'll play for West Indies, and he'll play for the Caribbean League, then he'll play in the Australian League, all over the place. He even plays Bangladesh League. In each of these places he plays for a different team. And even within the IPL he has played for many teams within India. So all of these people tend to have this, so the loyalty question that we asked around whether he's loyal to whatever, he's definitely a professional, so he is loyal to his profession. He is loyal to the team when he plays for that team. And this is how life is going to be. And then finally there is this nice book that I recommend called Me Enterprise, written by a friend of ours. His name is Ashok Shah. And his concept is that every individual is an enterprise in itself. So you are your own enterprise in some sense. And you should invest in yourself because you are your own enterprise. When you work for a company, your company is your customer. So there's a whole concept that he builds around that, which is kind of interesting. So the fact here is that gig economy is here to stay. Now this has become a little complicated in the whole COVID context where people say, what does gig mean? Are you allowed to work multiple jobs and all that? It's not, that is not really the intention of gig work. Right? Typically in a gig work you would, it depends on the kind of contract you have. In many cases people may be working part-time or whatever else that you do. So as I said, in a movie you get characters together for the movie. Those characters are also working for many movies at the same time. And when the movie is done, they have to find the next gig in a sense. So this is a good way to think about how it might happen. And will AI make that happen to our industry is a good question to think about. Now this is one thing that I want to mention here is that life in general is quite intertwined. And when you think about your own life, I like to think about it in these 4 different dimensions. One is what you do for yourself, so me as myself, my family, my work, and then my community. And all of these have to feel balanced if you want to feel good about your own life. Right? And personally, I prefer to not try to balance them on a daily basis, but over a long period of time, you want to feel like you have done some community work, you have done some social context, whatever else, you have family that you have supported and all that. And depending on different stages of your certain so maybe period your family might need you to be spending more time with your family because of certain conditions, and some other cases, work might want you to spend full time. So these are all parts of how you work through these things. So under these conditions, what I tell all people is that really you are responsible for your own life. Okay? So a lot of times what happens is that when you run a company like us, people come to you and say, oh, you are responsible for this and that. The reality is that the company can only support you in your own responsibility. But what happens to your life, what choices you make are all your own choices. And every choice has consequences. But it's your choice on what choice you want to make, and you have to accept the consequences of your choices. So this is really what it is. But you are really responsible for your own life. Okay? This is a thing that I like to say, that when you are defining your own life, you should have these three things that you should be thinking about. Right? You should have purpose, values, and action. So, in every one of you should have your own version of what are my personal values, what is my purpose, and what is the action I'm doing for that. And the way to think about this amongst the Mahabharata characters, Arjun was one of those who had all of these three things that he did really well. In other characters, I'm not so sure, they all had some flaws in their own thing, but Arjun was the one who had purpose, values, and had a bias towards action. A lot of people only talk about things, but unless you get things done, there is no point in discussing them. So action is very important. Now this is sort of where I'm going to share with you my point of view of what I think, how you should think about your career. But before I get there, do you have any questions or disagreements on what I've said so far? Or anything else? So far so good. Do you agree that you are responsible for your own your own career? Right? Meaning who else will take that responsibility? You should, right? So it's pretty obvious, but I think it's important to state that. Okay. So this is the one pager about what I recommend to people in terms of planning their careers. So before I get started, let me ask how many of you are in your first 10 years of your career? Okay, so that's the majority of the people here in this room. So normally what happens is that if you do an undergrad degree or whatever, you did your BE or BTech or some undergraduate degree, you would be done by your early 20s. So 20, 21, 22, at that stage you start your career. And you are looking at a 40-year career typically at this moment. So I would say that by the time you come to 30s, you will find that that number will go up to 45, 50 years. So it will extend, but let's start with the 40 year that is considered normal at this time. So you start with a 40-year career that you have. So the question is, what should you do when you are managing your career? So this is what I tell people, is that in your first 10 years, you should focus on learning and networking, and I'll explain to you what I mean by that. In the second 10 years, you should focus on becoming an expert at something, and the world should say that you are an expert at it. You should have your own personal brand that says, I am this, and I'll explain what I mean by that. In the third 10 years, you should know where your corner office is and plan your way to get to that corner office. And then finally, you have to set yourselves up for retirement and what should you do beyond retirement. Maybe there aren't that many people in that category here, so we will spend less time there. I do see most people in the first 10, so we'll spend more time there. So what do I mean by this, right? So first is, you should try to learn and network as much as you can. Now why should you do this in the first 10 years? Not because you need it in the first 10 years, but you need it for the rest of your life. So the earlier you figure it out, the better off you are. Okay? So the earlier you figure out how to learn and how to network, the better off you will be, because it's much easier to do that when you are younger. When you get older, it becomes much harder to learn. Okay? So if you have to learn, you should learn to learn very early on, so that then you know exactly how to learn, and then that helps you in terms of how you must go about it. Okay? So that's really what this first thing is all about. Now, when you build a network, you should have some mentors in your network, and the fact is you get better when you introspect. So this is really what it is all about. Now, why is learning that important? As we just discussed, we are in an exponential world, right? So whatever we have learned now, whatever new technologies will come, we don't know what will come 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Even in fact now things are moving so fast Maybe we may not even know what might be the new things that might come in the next 6 months. But who will win in this kind of a world? Anyone who can figure it out as it comes. Because you don't know what might come. So you need to know how to figure things out very quickly. So you need your own system to understand how you will learn. Okay? And we should spend some time discussing this because this is the most important thing that anyone needs to know. Because whatever you learned in college will not last very long. Okay? It becomes obsolete very quickly. In fact, if you were in college 3 years back, nobody talked about generative AI. Now everything is only generative AI. If you saw the literature in the last 3 months, everyone is only talking agentic AI, not just generative AI. And if you saw the stuff from the last 1 week, everybody is talking only about DeepSeek. Okay, so you see the pace at which things are moving. It's really amazing, and things are moving really fast. So you have to figure these things out as you go. So that's why you have to learn, right? Now, this is a pretty nice book. I'm sure you've seen it. It's all over the place. It's called Atomic Habits. It's by James Clear. And what he mentions is that instead of just focusing on goals, create processes on how you should learn as well. So define a process for how you go about it. And the power of compounding is again another interesting book that you guys should read called Psychology of Money. It's also a pretty nice, popular book actually. And what the basic comment on that is that if you look at this percentage improvement of 1% every day, okay, for 1 year, you will see that you will get plus 37% improvement. 1%, 0.1%, I think is what it says. 1.01 into 365. So just 1% better if you get every day. By the end of the year, you will be at 37.78% improvement. Okay. On the other hand, if you do 0.1 negative, so you drop 1.1 every day, over the year you will be again you will drop quite in a big thing. I don't remember the number, but 0.99 into 365 to the power whatever. So the power of compounding is that the fact is that if you keep doing the same thing incrementally, getting better at something, over a period of time you will see amazing amount of value for what you do. And I know we had Ramdev Agarwal, who is the main guy for Motilal Oswal. He came and gave a talk to our employees about the power of compounding. And he basically put a spreadsheet of numbers of saying, if you get 10% increment every quarter or 5% every quarter over long periods, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you will see amazing returns. And all of the people that talk about Warren Buffett as one of the main powers of compounders of all time. And when you look at his thing is that he's been doing it for 60 years. So his compounding over 60 years, that number looks astronomical because every year you keep incrementally taking it. You don't have to do anything spectacular on any 1 year basis, but every year you want to learn how to learn and how. Now let me ask you, everyone has their own style of learning. Everyone learns very differently. Let me ask you, what is your style of learning? Let me ask some of you here, who would volunteer to say they learned something new in the last few months? How many of you figured out what's happening in AI, for example, in the last few months? I'm sure some of you did, or some other thing for that matter. Yeah, you did, right? So how did you figure out what is your learning style? How do you learn?
I went through the Google things and analyzed on the high level things. And later on I started figuring out what is happening in the macro level and I started joining a course.
Okay.
And trying to learn the programming level also.
So you attended like a Coursera type course online or Andrew M course?
Initially I tried the online stuff and everything. Currently I'm taking a trainer who is known to me. He's doing an online course.
Okay. So you find that interacting with a person was better than just learning on your own?
Exactly.
Alright. How about anyone else? How do you learn? Yeah? You like to read and that's how you prefer to read? Okay. What is the latest book that you read recently? Okay, think about it. So you read online. You prefer to buy hard books. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
So what I do is, so I'm very impatient. So what I do is I start looking into more videos and start generally videos by starting off with. I play it in 2x. I don't go and sit and do all the things. I try to get a grasp of what is there in the complete sentence. And after that, I stop looking into stuff and I'll create a problem statement for it. I create my own task and start looking into it. So I run into multiple stuffs, many blockers, and that time I go back, I look into stuff, I figure it out.
How do you remember what to look back at?
No, when I figure out, I create a problem which includes almost everything which I have seen in that particular tutorial. Probably it will. So if I learn a new AI, will, for example, if I take a rack, I know what are the main components. I understand a question, so that I work on that myself. And each one I will get into some blockers, and that time I go research on particular thing. Once I complete it, I feel complete in getting a complete picture of that in a short period of time. So that's how I.
Okay, very nice. So anyway, so I said different people learn very different things differently. Sometimes you can learn through listening to an audio book or an audio tutorial or a YouTube tutorial or maybe a Spotify video or whatever else. Some people prefer to see things visually, and sometimes you prefer to do some experiments and then learn or whatever. Each one of us has a very different learning style. The earlier you figure out your learning style, the better off you will be, because then you know how to use your learning style to get to something recently very effective or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to share with you a little bit about how so I'll share at the moment. So this is again another book. So you have the deck with you. So the deck has lots of references in it. So this particular book I read a few years back called Building a Second Brain. I don't know how many of you have seen it. If you read this book, it's a very nice book. It talks about how do you build your own system to keep information. His point is that there's so much information overload happening. There's a lot of new things coming in all the time. I cannot remember everything in my brain. So I should have a second brain, which means a system where I keep track of everything I have read. I keep it in one place and categorize it in a certain model, so that when I want to look for something, I should be able to find it. So that is how he defines it. So he has defined a system of how you should do it. This is again another very interesting book called Designing Your Life. So how many of you are familiar with design thinking? Not too many? Maybe you should want to do a course on design thinking in the company. It's a good idea to learn a little bit about design thinking. So this particular book, Designing Your Life, these authors have actually applied design thinking to life. Okay, so one of them is a professor at Berkeley, and the other one is a professor at Stanford. But they were also one of them was part of Apple's design team, and the other one was at IDEO, which is a design firm. So again, they have a design background, and they teach this course on designing your life. And some of these ideas you'll find are there as well. I like to use these two tools quite a bit that I've mentioned here. One of them is a tool called XMind, which is a nice mind mapping tool. And then I use Notion as one of my sort of go-to places for dumping all these things that I learned from various places. So I'm going to share with you very recently, I did a session internally on AI, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about AI. So if you listen to lots of podcasts, videos, YouTubes, it gets very overwhelming. So what I found is that for all the YouTube type videos, I use Notebook LM quite a bit. So I take all the YouTube things and everything else directly into Notebook LM. And then Notebook LM can summarize that beautifully and also give me a very nice audio podcast on what Notebook, whatever YouTube is saying. If you have tried Notebook LM? Yeah, some of you. Very cool. It's from Google, so you can go to notebooklm.google or something and you should be able to find it. It's very cool actually. It's very nice. You can put in hundreds of documents and then it will kind of understand them very nicely. So yes, I did that. Then the other thing that I did was like you just said, you listen to various videos, so I did too. And then I'm learning new things, different concepts, and I put them all those as concepts in my mind map. So I create a mind map which has all of those concepts in one place. So they are now all over the place, but there are different ideas in that. Then this time what I did, which was very interesting, is that I asked ChatGPT questions one after the other. And I told ChatGPT that, hey, give me answers in this format. I want to do a presentation. So for every question that I ask you, give me 6 bullet points. Okay. And give me some speaker notes, give me references, and give me a visual. Okay. And I asked it about 100 questions. Okay. So I captured all the transcript on that. And it was very useful. Right? It gives all kinds of explanations, it gives references, you follow the references, check what it's saying and all that. Then just to make sure it's saying the right things and all that, I took that Word file and stuck it into Claude. Claude is from Anthropic. And then I asked Claude to say, hey, I want to do this presentation, give me an outline of 40 slides. So it gave me an outline, 40 slides. And one by one I asked it to make all my slides. And it was very useful. So within a matter of 3 weeks, I was able to collect a lot of information from all kinds of sources, put it into a new nice place, and then have an opinion on many of these things. So I've been doing this every few months, but I've sort of figured that ChatGPT and others also really help in making this happen. So I did a similar session about 6 months back on, actually last year, on bioeconomy. So I have no idea about biology and all that. I was trying to take on this new responsibility. So I said, let me go figure this out. So then, again, same thing. It was very useful. 1 year before that, I did a whole session like this on crypto. So I said, this crypto stuff is getting kind of interesting. I should figure out what the hell this is all about. So spent a lot of time understanding the tech and the economics and the business and all on crypto. So again, this is all different ways to learn, but learning to learn is the most important skill that you can acquire. The faster you figure that out, the better off you are. Anyone have comments or questions on this? I'll come to this a little later. The other important thing to note is that beyond your professional career in this first 10 years, you should take care of all the other things like, getting married if you want to, building a family, pursue your hobbies and dreams. A lot of people I know who are my age say, after I retire, I'm going to go learn golf. Unfortunately, it's too late to do it. If you want to learn golf at 25, it's much easier than learning at 65. So you might as well figure those kinds of things out early. You want to go skydiving, scuba diving. This is the time to do all these things. If you want to take a year off the Himalayas, at this point it doesn't really make a huge difference to your long-term career. You can't do that when you're 45. Doing it at 25 is pretty easy to do. Okay? So in these first 10 years, your goal should be to learn and network. And then finally, you must accept diversity, because what happens is as you get older, people get fixed and rigid about their own ideas. And they're not open to new things. So the earlier you are willing to meet different kinds of people and learn different things, the better off you will be. Okay, now I'm going to get to the second 10, but before I get there, does anyone have any questions about networking or learning and how do you network and all that? Any other comments you want to say in this topic? Question? Yeah.
Of late, we have seen a lot of debates about work-life balance.
Yeah.
So, wanted to understand your perspectives on that.
Yeah. You want to record this and put it on. See, as I said earlier, right, you are responsible for your life and your own career. So the first thing I mentioned. Second thing I said is that work life, I don't like to see it as work life alone. I said there are 4 dimensions to what I like to think about. What I do for myself, what I do for work, what I do for my family, and what I do for the community. And it's all about harmonizing these 4 over a long period of time. So that's the other thing. And then finally, as I said, every choice you make has consequences. So if you make a certain set of choices, you have to bear the consequences of that. Okay? So having said that, it is for each individual to decide what is right for them. Okay? Now, if you want to be Narayan Murthy, then you have to work 70 hours a day. But if you don't want to be Narayan Murthy, then you don't have to work 70 hours. Right? So it is some of that. Right? If you want to be SNS and you want to be the chairman of L&T, then you should work 90 hours. Okay? But I'm not sure everyone wants to be the chairman of L&T. It's your choice. It all depends on what you want to do in your life, right? And it's your choice. But that said, I must say that if you want to really succeed in at work, then you are competing with others working at work. And if everyone works harder than you, then you are not going to get promoted. That's kind of obvious, right? So you are dependent on who else is with you. So yeah, I mean you have to put something to make you different, right? So that's really what it is all about. So I don't want to answer that question. I like to work hard actually. I don't. I enjoy working. So I spend a lot of time thinking and working. All my life I've done that. So I don't have any regrets about it. And yes. Yeah.
So I was listening to how you're talking about learning to learn. So
Yeah.
how about learning to unlearn?
I don't think it's you need to unlearn. I think the unlearn concept is kind of screwed up. You build on what you have learned. Okay, so you learn new things, and when you learn new things, you have better perspective on what you have learned, which may not be relevant anymore. So I think this whole concept of unlearning doesn't really happen. You can't unlearn anything. You have learned it, it's good. What happens is that as you learn more and more things, now you have the ability to decide what is more important. So follow what is more important. It's not a question of unlearning anything. You learn and now you are wiser and now you have new dimensions, new ideas, new assumptions, new ways of thinking, so you move on. I somehow don't get this whole concept of unlearning. I don't think it makes any sense. How do you unlearn? It's not really realistic. Alright, so let me move to the next 10. Can you give me a timer on what time it is right now? How much more do we have? Oh, we have a lot of time. Okay, so let's go to the next 10 years. Okay, so this is the second 10 years. This is actually the most important 10 years in terms of thinking about your career. As I said, in the first 10 years, you're learning to learn, learning to network. It doesn't really matter if you take a little bit of a detour, something new comes in, that's very exciting. As long as you're learning all the time, that's very important to you. So now, how many of you are in your second 10 years of your career? Okay, so this next few slides I have are for you mainly, but also those who are in the first 10 years, you should also know what you should be thinking about in your next 10 years. So in the next second 10 years, what I tell people is that you need to become an expert at something, and the world should say that you are an expert at it. You need your own personal brand, and you may have to invest in yourself. And let me come back to this point about becoming an expert and why I think this is so important. So what happens is, I'll tell you the motivation of this whole presentation, where it came from. So I've been running a business or been part of Persistent now for 35 years. I started the company in 1990. Okay, so in the last 35 years, as I've been the CEO of the company for 29 out of those 35 years. And when you are the CEO, you're meeting people at different levels, you're interviewing people, and you meet a lot of people at different stages in their life. And you will see, somebody comes with a whole bio. So I worked for 5 years in this company, 6 years in that company, 3 years here, whatever. 20 years of experience, all kinds of things. And they say, okay, that's what you have done, but who are you? I'm not able to answer that question. A lot of people just get confused by this question. No, I can do anything. I can do everything. I can do whatever. So it's all these kinds of discussions that we have. So okay, you have spent 20 years, done this work, that work, fine. But what has that made you, right? Who are you because of that? Is it just that you have worked 5 years here, you are general manager there, 3 years? It's not your designation or your experience of having clocked hours or years in companies is what defines you. You should be able to say that because of my 20 years of experience, I am the expert at whatever you like to say. Right? Now, if you said, let's pick an example because we are all tech related things. You said, okay, I'm an expert in, let's say, agile engineering development, whatever. So when you say that you are an expert at that topic, who says you are an expert? Is it just you saying it? or is the world going to say? Now, how is world defined by this? So if everybody on your floor thinks you are the expert, that's the extent to which you are an expert. Now, if Trivandrum wants to do an event on that, and they call you because they think you are the best expert in Trivandrum, at Trivandrum level, you are the expert in that area. If you are doing an event at India level and somebody calls you, then yeah, you are an India level expert. So the expertise that you have, right, the world saying it, is a function of what kind of world you are referring to, right? Is it your own community, your own friends, your family, your mother says you are an expert in something. So that has certain limitations of what you might want to do. So now the question is, you may be there, but how do you establish yourself as an expert at that thing? Right? So you have to think about how to get to a point where you can create identity and personal brand in some way or the other. So how do you make that happen? Right? So that's really the question that you need to think about. But when you have 20 years of experience, it's not very useful to have 21-year experiences or even 10 into 2-year experiences of this and that and everything else. Because at the end of 20 years, if you're doing something that someone who's got 5 years experience can do, why would I pay you anything more than I would pay somebody who has 5 years of experience? If I have 20 years of experience, which is very substantial, then at the end of 20 years of experience, I should be really very valuable. And I should have experience that can say that because of my 20 years of experience, I'm really an expert at something. Right? By this time, you should be really good at something. So this is very important. Right? Anybody have questions on this topic? Any thoughts? Okay, let's come to this. And then how do you go about doing this? Right? So this is one question that you should have asked me. I was pausing. Okay. So the question is, how do you do this? Right? So one is, of course, you have to decide, okay, I'm an expert at this particular thing. So who's the target audience that must say that I'm an expert at something? And you must say, okay, this is the group. So it is this. There's an agile event that happens, there's a conference that is held. Are you writing in that paper? Do you have white papers written by you on your website? Does InApp's pages show that you are an expert on this kind of topic? Or any of those kinds of things. You have to target your audience. It's not about just getting into the newspaper. You should know who your target audience is. Who should say that you are an expert? Okay. The next thing is that you need to have a set of mentors who will help you define your position, and they can also say something. So I don't know how many of you have been on program committees of conferences. Any of you know? Any of you? Some of you know. So you know how you get invited? How did you get invited to be on the program?
I have been part of coordinating it, not invited.
Which one?
For IMA.
Okay. So
IRI conferences.
okay. How about you? You said you were also there. Someone else out there is there.
So, I'm part of a marketing team. So this was a marketing conference.
Okay.
Like knowledge sharing was required. So like I was invited into the panel.
So who invited you? Somebody who knew that you were good at it.
Yes. Yes.
So the point I'm trying to make here is that a lot of these things happen because someone who knows you invites you. There's an old boys network or a boys network or girls network is how these things happen. So the network you have is very important in trying to get you that visibility to whatever else you might do. So if I'm right now, wanting to do, I'm involved in the database community. So I get the database guys are my friends. So they're hosting a conference somewhere. They'll say, hey, Anand, why don't you do this for us or that for us? And some of these are fairly prestigious. You can add in your CV. So these kinds of things you can add to your CV. So those are good ideas of explanation of how things happen. How do you get invited to be a speaker at a conference? And somebody running the conference knows you. They say, hey, we've heard you somewhere. Why don't you come? We'd love to have you give a talk here, a talk there. So a lot of this happens because of networks that you build. Okay. Let me come to this mentor thing, which is a little bit I want to share, and I'll come back to this particular topic in a moment. So this is the slide I wanted to share with you about mentors. And he mentioned the Eklavya Dronacharya thing, but I'm going to give you 4 kinds of mentors that I believe you should have. And you should all have a list of mentors that you build. And how do you build them is what I'm going to explain to you right now. So the first category is the Eklavya Dronacharya mentor, where Eklavya was following Dronacharya, but Dronacharya did not know that Eklavya was his mentor. So like this, today you can do this for anyone. You can track anyone online, and you say, okay, I'm following Elon Musk, I'm following Trump, whoever you want to follow. You can follow them very easily, and you can go on Twitter, LinkedIn, Insta, Facebook, wherever you want, and you can follow anybody you like. And you can listen to what they say, and you can listen to YouTube videos, all kinds of ways of how you can track people. Subscribe to their channel, and you have them pretty much can follow. They don't know that you are following them. They don't particularly get to know that you are following them. And you can follow anybody you like on any topic you like, and then you can also be very selective about what they say. So you can agree with some parts of Elon Musk and listen to parts of his stuff, but ignore the rest of them. Okay? So like this, you can be an Eklavya Dronacharya mentor in many cases. Right? The second category is this Dev Panchayat concept, where in all of our Hindu homes, we have about half a dozen deities for sure, and then some more. So who do we have normally in my house? If you come, we'll have definitely a Ganpati. Then we'll have some form of Vishnu, either Balakrishna or some Krishna or Ram, one of them. We'll have a Lakshmi, Saraswati, and then Shiva also. So everybody is there. So we have about 6 or 7 of them, and then there are a bunch of photos from various places. So this is how you have this. And what are you supposed to do every morning or every day or every frequently? You are supposed to tell the gods about what's happening in your life and keep them updated. This is what you are supposed to do. So when you need help, you don't have to explain your problem because God knows already your problem. And He can come and help you. Like this, you should have your own set of half a dozen mentors who all are responsible for different aspects of your life. So some people are for knowledge, for getting funda, somebody is for other life things, somebody is for family related stuff. And you need to keep them informed or updated in some form or the other so that when you have a problem, you know who to go to. This doesn't happen when you can't find a mentor when you are in trouble. Then you get consultants and they want to charge you money. So that's not what you're looking for. You don't want consultants, you want mentors. So mentors are people who are generally aware of what you're doing, and when you need help, you can go to them. So I have had some of these like this. So one of my thesis advisors, he used to be at Microsoft. I would track him. I would go to his house every time I traveled to Seattle, spend a day or two with him. And he would give me like a very nice capsule of what's happening in the data community. Like this is a friend that I have in the Bay Area. His name is Murli. So what I would do with Murli is that every time we were there, one weekend, Sunday morning, we would just walk on. So there's a very nice shoreline park there. It's in Mountain View. So we would walk together for about 45 minutes to 1 hour. I would tell him what's happening. He would tell me what's happening in his life. And what I find is that when you're doing this with someone, the fact of articulating what is happening in your life can be so useful in itself that you find your own answers. It's not like he was doing much for me, but I had this routine. Every 2 months I would go meet him and I would tell him, oh, this is what's happening in the business, this is what I'm doing, all that stuff. These are my main challenges, what should I think about? And he would give me some of his own stuff. But the fact of articulating what was happening in my own life really helped it very easy for me to remember what is going on. Right? So like this, you should have your own set of mentors that you know you want to keep track of. Now you go to someone and say, oh, be my mentor, nobody will like to do it. But it is a mutual thing. I'll explain this to you in the next picture as well. So the third one out here, you know who that is, right? That's Nasim. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the story of Narasimha and how he showed up to help his Bhakt Prahlad. So Prahlad had a challenge in his life. His father had all kinds of boons from the god, from Vishnu. And basically he was told that he cannot be killed in the morning, evening, inside, outside, all kinds of very complicated constraints were set up. And he could not be killed basically. So he became immortal and he was traumatizing the population that he was the king for, and also his son. So Prahlad was Bhakt, his main puja god was Vishnu. So he asked Vishnu, say, please help me. So Vishnu showed up as a very specialist person, neither in the morning, nor in the evening, nor human, nor animal, all kinds of constraints he met, and he got the job done for Prahlad. So like this, if you have a very complicated problem, then you need to be able to use your mental network to get to someone like that when you need them. And you don't want Narasimha to be sitting next to you on a daily basis. So you want them to come when you want them to come, but only for the period of the job that you want to get. So when you have this crazy problem that you have to deal with, then you need to bring your Narasimha in. And you will get the Narasimha to come in only because of your bhakti with Vishnu. Okay? It doesn't happen otherwise. It doesn't just show up for everyone. And then finally, if you want to have to do the Dharma Yuddha, then you need to bring none other than Krishna to the game. And the interesting thing to note about the Krishna-Arjuna relationship is that Krishna had opportunities. He could have gone to the other side as well. But Arjuna and Krishna had a relationship, and they had mutual respect for each other. And the interesting thing is that Krishna didn't just give advice and go away. He came with him, and he was with him through the chariot. He was part of the action. So mentor-mentees want to be part of the action. They don't want to just give advice and go away. They are part of the game. They both benefit from the relationship. The mentee also benefits, but mentor also benefits from the relationship. So mentor-mentee relationship is usually a two-way street, not a one-way street. Okay? So you listen to both sides and you hear from them, and as if I learn from you, if I'm your mentor, I also learn from you. We are mutually mentoring each other. You know? That's how this relationship works. Okay, so with this long story, let me give you an exercise to do. Okay, you should go and identify your list of. So you should have your list of half a dozen people who are your mentors, and a list of these. And then you should keep track of it, on a quarterly basis, on a 6-month basis. Am I getting a chance to meet them? Now, when you talk about mentors, you don't have to only look at very senior people. Sometimes young people, your kids, can be very good mentors. They are the ones who are fearless. They will tell you everything about what you are not doing right. Just have to ask them. Okay? So a lot of times you can get to mentors who are of your age, you can be your friends, they can be whatever. But having this clear idea of who your mentors are and having a list saying, here are my 6 people that I go to, and ensuring that they are being updated and they know what's happening, and we can go to them when you have trouble, is very, very useful. Now the Seglavia list is a list that you can track. That's very easy. I think you can go to LinkedIn or whatever, follow people, get a long list there. And it'll automatically feed you stuff in there. So this is how you should do it. The other two on the right hand side, you don't have to worry about them right now, but if you do this really well, then this is a good way to get this to happen. Okay. Let me come back to this one more topic here. Okay, some of you did not ask me about how do you network, but I want to give you some tips on how to network. Okay? So now the important thing to learn is, this is a question I want to ask you. You meet a lot of people every day. And let's say, you meet somebody, let's take an example right now. So let's say you travel on the train or on the plane or whatever else. And when you are flying, there are some people that you flew with that you remember for a very long time. And most of the other times you meet a lot of people you don't remember. Do you relate to this question? So I want you to think about this and ask yourselves and tell me, why is it that you remember some people and not some other people? The conversation you had with them may have helped you remember them. They should also remember you. Yeah. What else?
There is something that benefited you with that conversation you had.
Yeah, something that benefited you with the conversation. Yes. So anyway, think through this a little bit more, okay? And figure out why is it that you just do this thought exercise over the next 30, 45 days that you are traveling here, there, you meet some people at strange places, you go to some temple, you meet somebody. You meet a lot of people, you don't even remember them by the end of the day. Okay? But then there are some people who leave an impression on you and you remember them. The question is, why do you remember them? What did you do with them? What was the nature of your engagement with them that made you remember them? Of course, conversation is a good one. It could be anything that may be thought-provoking or anything like that. What I find is that if I have to remember the guy next day, meaning something comes up in my mind the next day or 2 days later, that says, oh, this guy said something to me, I'm thinking about it, then I'm more likely to remember it. Conversations, you remember the conversation, but very often you don't remember the people you had the conversation with. This is again very interesting, but this is the reality of what happens. I want to relate this to the business as well. So, I meet a lot of people who are in the sales profession, trying to sell and all that. And what I find is that when you get a young sales guy, they are very interested in telling the story. But the reality is that, you want business to come because the person who you met remembers you and remembers you when he needs you. And I must say this, that at Persistent, actually, I got a lot of business from people who I met in all kinds of odd places where no business was happening. But, we kind of got in touch with each other and say, hey, okay, great, whatever. We had a good conversation. I explained what I was doing. And after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, I had people call me back saying, hey, you remember we had met at that airport and, I have this lead. Do you have something for us? Okay? So that whole concept of how business walks into you because of your network is really amazing. And I have been thinking about this issue about why does this happen and why do I make it happen for the last 30 years almost. And I have now figured out that if I want somebody to remember me, what should I do to make sure that he remembers me? I can do this quite deliberately now, not that I do it for everyone because sometimes you don't want to know everyone who is sitting next to you as well, because there is an investment you are making. But if you feel like you must get to know someone and then make something happen, not just a conversation, you can just have a conversation and you know that they are going to not remember you. But if you want to create a situation where they want to remember you, then that can be done quite deliberately. Any questions on this? Yeah. So there are techniques that I have used, but one important thing that I find is that, as I said, if people will remember you, if you kind of provoke their mind to the extent that they are thinking about you after you have left for several days. Okay. So if you give them something that they learned new, some new activity that happened, you frame the conversation in the context of why they might remember you and all of those kind of things, then that comes out to be very handy. I'll give you one other piece of guidance which may be more relevant to some of the people who are meeting. So I ran a short workshop for our sales team on how to sell to CEOs. Okay. Now CEOs are very different kind of a beast, and selling to CEOs, typically CEOs not buying anything, but it's good to know CEOs. So, when you are meeting a CEO for the first time, where you kind of do your homework and how do you make sure that, CEOs remember you is some of those things that I've tried out with different kinds of things, and I find that you can make this quite effective. So this networking business, right, that in India for some reason we have this that oh network matlab wo chamchagiri hai or some other weird things like that. But the reality is that if I want to do something new, I'm likely to call people I know. How do I know somebody? That's part of my network. Right? I know them because of various reasons and all that. If I want to get something done, I want to open a conference, new office, well, I go through the network. So network is very, very valuable and very important. Everyone should build their own network. But we tend to not invest a lot in building it. And I'm trying to suggest to you that, this is an important aspect of what you have. And the network will help you build your personal brand as well. Okay, so this again is the last part of the second 10 years. So in the first 10 years, as you remember or you might recall, I did not talk about financial situation in your first 10 years. So I would be very happy to suggest that or even take a pay cut in my first 10 years because I'm learning something that I want to learn. I'm getting the right kind of exposure, I'm getting the right kind of network access, getting to meet the right people, do good quality work. I would take a financial sacrifice on that. Because in the long term, that early money is not that critical. What is most important in the first 10 years is to ability to learn good stuff. If you're learning good things, then you can make up money later. But by the time you are in your early 30s, you should know how much money you have. And the most important thing about financial security is to adjust your lifestyle to your earning. If you spend less, you have more money. But it's your choice. You can decide how to. Just by this, you should have started planning how much money you will need till you retire. Are you saving? Are you investing enough and all that? So financial things you should, of course, think early on. But by this time, you should have a pretty good idea of what you're missing. Okay, with this now, I'm in the third 10. Before I get there, any questions from any of you? Yeah. Oh yeah. So to get, you must give first. This is the golden rule of networking. If you want to, somebody should invite you to something, you have to give first. If you want people to follow you on Facebook, you have to follow them first. If you say good things about people, they will say good things about you. Well, charity also works the same way. When you give because it feels good. And if you give, good things happen. So it's not a quid pro quo, but if you want to get from the ecosystem or the society or the network, you have to contribute to the network. If you want people to say good things about you, they want to invite you to conferences, they want you to be the keynote speaker, then you have to invite them when you get a chance. So you have to plan that. So you have to give first before you can take from the network. Yes.
Largely in the Indian context, if you look at it, there's a lot of shyness that comes in, and you need to overcome that part to build a strong network. I'm sure in your early career stages as well, you must have faced that kind of an hindrance as well. How did you overcome that, and how did you expand yourself to overcome that, start building the network, socialize more with people? Because it needs an element of being an extrovert as well equally. Because most of the people in my circle I have seen are more of introverts. They feel very shy when it comes to opening up, building networks. Though they are willing to do it, but there's a lot of things that holds them back. How can one?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But what I'm trying to tell you is that you don't have to be extroverted or completely over the top when you're trying to network. This is not a politician type of a network where everyone must know the politician, but the politician needs to know no one. It's not that way. Everyone needs to know each other. So it's a one at a time discussion that you have to do. There's one person at a time. And that level of networking, you don't have to be hugely extroverted to do that. You can manage that quite effectively by sort of making one at a time conversations. But yeah, you have to be willing to at least engage in a conversation, do some homework, think about what topics you can talk about with some authority, where you have an opinion, how do you go about, when somebody is going to ask you something, you should have an opinion that they are thinking about. So you need to build your own opinion about some of those things. So those are things you must do to have a chance of networking.
Yeah, I have the same question, like being socially seamless, including having a network. I mean, is good at, if we are good at networking, so is it very required that we should be social also? Because normally we don't get usually invited to some communities unless we are not that social. So that is
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of you will work your way into communities that you want to be part of. And yes, communities make a difference. So yeah, I mean, be part of, say, the tech community or whatever. So one example of something that I would recommend is that many of you are members of the ACI. There are just very few of you. So we have considered that as an option. It's a pretty nice society. I've been pretty active with that. Go to india.acm.org. You should be able to sign up as a member for 1,500 rupees. And I know InApp has been very active in the community with the Computer Society of India in the past, but also with other societies. The CSI right now is pretty much dead. IEEE as well. Those are again nice forums to get to meet technical people. I'm sure there are other such activities going on, the Agile world, the Java, all these open source things. There's a whole bunch of communities that get connected. And there are Toastmasters. There's a lot of different kinds of things that happen which are also useful for building these communities. So again, going back to sort of company-related point of view. So when we thought through all of this stuff, actually we changed a lot of HR policies within the company. So one of them was the fact that I'm making people responsible for their own life and career. I must allow people to do things that are important for them for their own professional career. They should be allowed to build their brands, all those kinds of things that we were not very conscious about in the past. We said, okay, we must allow this to happen. Learning should be important. Learning should not be restricted only to the things that I need tomorrow, but I can have more learning opportunities with 5 people in the company. Feel like coming together and doing a course on something that is not relevant. We should not be asking too many questions of relevance because everything is relevant when it comes to learning. So these kinds of things we sort of opened up a lot. We also allowed families to be part of some of these kinds of things. The whole idea was that if work is going into the family should be allowed to come into work, right? So we opened up a whole bunch of doors to make those kinds of things happen. So some of these things we did just to sort of allow our employees to follow this story that I'm sharing.
Also, sir, one more thing to add, like in the second band, like it's 32 to 42. 32 to 42.
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Yeah, so what is the priority in investing on learning? Like you didn't mention.
So learning is something you figure out early on and you learn for the rest of your life.
So if a person tries to like they
you cannot stop learning ever in your life. Whether you are 60, you are 80, whatever it is. There is no, the world is just moving too fast. Unless you keep pace, you are done. So there is no option but to learn all the time.
Do you find the area where you want to be expert in? You said that after 2 years. So
you should know that by the time you are in your 11, 12, 13 years.
yeah, but by the like when you go into management, we try to learn whatever comes.
No, you can be an expert in managing teams. I'm not saying that's not an expertise you can acquire. But then, how do you know that you are the best manager in the country? If you can say that. So again, there are a lot of things that come in along with this particular thing. You should be really an expert at something. So you should be really good at it, not just okay at it. So pick what you want to be the expert at. The world should say that you are an expert. It means you should really, really be good at whatever you are doing. So that's what must happen. So if I get someone who has 20 years of experience, I definitely ask them this question. So who are you? What do you stand for? Okay? So what time is it? Okay, so that's good. We'll be in good time. So how many of you are in your third time? So now let me explain to you what I mentioned here. The first thing that I mentioned here is that define your corner office. Now a lot of people think corner means only CEO. Whatever is your corner. So I see this as your last or most ultimate position that you want to see yourself in your early 50s. The reason is that typically when some new nomination, new CEO, new whatever, new CTO people will try to get someone in their early 50s as sort of the oldest people that they will like to take into that job, because then they think that when I get him in that job, he's going to be there for the next 8-10 years. That's the reason why 50 is sort of the, in the current professional world that you see, is sort of the max of the career that you need to do. So if you have a plan of being CEO, CXO, whatever else you want to be, you should be sure that you want to get it in your early 50s. The other thing that I have found in general is that people in their mid 40s are the luckiest people in the world. Because in their early 40s, till then, they are always thinking that, I meet so many people say, oh, I worked very diligently in the company, I got promoted every 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And now I'm in my mid 40s and I don't see I'm going to be the CEO. I thought, it's like a linear chain. The army, you have this every 3 years, you get promoted. At the end, you have to get to the top. Right? But there are only so many people who can be at the top, the pyramid tries to squeeze in, all kinds of things start to happen. Mid 40s, people realize that whatever they thought that they're going to be are not going to be. So they get very unhappy about it. So what I try to tell people is that in your early 40s, figure out where you want to be and be happy about getting to where you want to be. So it's your choice, everything is your choice. So you should choose where you want to be at your early 50s and you should plan your way to get to that point. And what I tell people is that you have no more than 3 steps to get to that point. So I've already said to you that you should become an expert at something. So you are a really expert database query optimizer at the age of 40. But you have an aspiration to be the CEO. Okay? Then you have to find a path to get to that point. You say, oh well, I have no sales experience, I have not done this, I have not done that. So you should do an inventory of what you know and what you need to do. And you have to map your way from where you are to where you want to be. So you have no more than 3 steps. If you're going to take 8 steps, you just don't have that much time. So you have to readjust where you want to be so that you can make it in 3 steps. So this is the key thing to be doing that. And who is N-1 and you promote. Second option is you find somebody who is already a CXO in some other company, much smaller, and you say, okay, I'll hire you, become a CEO in a bigger. Third category is somebody who is the head of TCS's one division, and you could hire him in a smaller company. He's not CEO, but he's running a big enough business, so you would want him. So things like that is how you happen. It's one of 3 options. So if you want to be here at early 50s, you need to be here by 48. You are already 42. You have 2 more steps to get to that N-1 step of where you want to get. This is why I'm saying that you have no more than 3 steps to get. Now, how do you do this? So this is what I suggest to people with a lot, and this is worth doing. So you should enumerate all options. So what happens is when you're in your early 40s or whatever, you say, oh, I could be this, I could be that, I could also like to be this, and whatever. So like, as an example, my brother-in-law, he is in the army. Okay. So he was posted for a while in Allahabad, where he was part of the SSP. He would work from 7 to 1 for 3 days, 4 days, and then 3, 4. They have these 3 boards, and then they have a holiday board, and then they work till 1 o'clock. In the afternoon, you are home, you do whatever, play golf. So life is pretty cool. I would love to be a brigadier. I wouldn't mind just running as a brigadier. But nobody's going to take me as a brigadier unless I do the second lieutenant and the whole shit that has to happen with it. Now, it would be nice to have a posting in a peacetime place where you are just kind of playing golf. But you do this for 2 years and then 3 years you're sitting on some border, which I don't want to do. So you can't pick parts of your job. You have to pick the whole package. Right? So that's why what happens is when we hear a lot of people, they like to pick parts of this job, parts of that job. I want half the afternoon from the brigadier's job, but I want the CEO's salary. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. If you take the job, you have to take the tap that comes with it. So what I recommend to people is you should make different sheets of paper and write down what kind of things you think you might want separately. Because what happens otherwise is be confused. We say, I would love to be a professor, but this and that, and I want some part of this guy's life, some part of that life. It doesn't work. So you figure this out, you make a list of what all you like doing, make a list of things you don't like doing. And if you have a clarity on where you want to go by the time you are there, then you have a much better chance of getting to where you want to get to and being happy about getting there. So this is the reason why you do it. Now, I don't tell somebody in their early 20s to go do this because you don't know what you're looking for, you don't know where you might go. So in your 20s, go do as much as different things as you want to do. It doesn't matter. In your early 40s, you better define where you want to be, where do you see yourself. So by this time, you should have clarity of where you want to enter. And again, this is where this comes in. Satisfaction is really not what you have divided by what you want. If you reduce the wants, and also it's good. So it's a combination of doing this kind of exercise in your early 40s. So you know where you're going to be, what you're doing. You have peace of mind, and then you can achieve whatever you want. Okay, so I'm going to go through the last 10 very fast. But anybody have questions so far on whatever I have said? Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges in your second 10 years?
It's very hard for people to become an expert at something. People like to do this at the same time. A lot of people get very distracted. They want to do this and that, and they see something new. I want to jump into that, and a third one, and so on. So they have not enough expertise in any topic. And the other thing is that jobs are not that interested in allowing you to be an expert at something. So depending on whatever project comes, go do this, go do that. Oh, you're learning new things. Yeah, you're learning new things, but you should become an expert at something. Because in your early 10 years, you should learn everything you can learn. I would not hesitate at all. But in your second 10 years, if you're only learning all the time, and you have no ability to become an expert at something, then your value is not very high. But very few people think through this enough. So as I said, I see a lot of people in their mid-40s who are very unhappy because one, they haven't planned their career very well. They have not thought through all these things early on. So they have done randomly, I was working here, then somebody offered me 20% more, I jumped there, I did the same thing again, 4 years I worked there. I got promoted twice, now I'm another place, and then I know this and that. I can do anything for you. I am really good at whatever you want me to do. And it's so unfortunate, but you get good people who are like completely incompetent by the time they get to their mid-40s. And if I'm hiring someone at sort of the mid-level in the organization, I don't want to train him on what is my business. You should know what he's supposed to do. I'm bringing him in because he's an expert. I want to pay him money, so he should come in with something. This is a question I've thought through and I'm following with. So when I hire somebody at a senior level, I say that in our business there are three things that are very important. One is technology stuff, real expertise, because if I can get someone who has the capability to communicate with the customer at the right level, then it's very valuable. So that is very useful. Second, I need somebody who can sell. Very easy to figure out. If you can bring business, I need you. Anyone who brings business is always important. And third, you need people who will keep trains running on time. So everything is in order for project management order. But when I'm hiring someone, I want to hire someone who has at least one A rather than three Bs. So I get a fellow, yeah, I can do customer, I can bring business, I can do this, I can do that. So okay, what are you really good at? Well, I can do everything. You can't be good at everything. I'm good at something. Right? So I would much rather prefer someone who says, I'm a salesman, I bring business in and pay me for the business I'm bringing. Right? Very easy. Somebody says, I'm a techie, the world knows I'm where it is. Because you have me on your company, your brand will be improved because everyone is reading my stuff. That's very important. I would love to take that. Things like that. So that's really what is important. And I think people need to build deeper expertise by the time they're in their early 40s. Now let's get to the last part. This is you should contribute to the office, matter and leadership team. And the reality is that even after you retire, you have many years of active life to happen. If you don't set yourselves up to do things post-retirement, typically after you retire, nobody invites you. And one of the books that I really found very interesting and that kind of got me thinking about this topic a lot about a few years back was this very interesting article. This is from 2019 from a fellow called Arthur C. Brooks. Okay? And he says, your professional decline is coming much sooner than you think. So what he says is that every career, you have a certain point at which you can be the best, and at a certain beyond that, if you try to stretch your career too far beyond that, and people ask why is he not retiring? So you have to find the next thing before you retire, before you get to that point of saying I reached a point where whatever. So you have to reinvent yourself every so often to ensure that you have life in the work you want to do. So you see this in cricket right now all the time. You get a guy say, hey man, yes you've had a great career, but you can't be that forever. So have you figured out what you're doing next? Are you going to do commentary? Are you going to be coaching? Whatever else. You need to be ready to take on those responsibilities and have set up those networks. Otherwise, you'll not be able to get to that point. This is true in professional life. It's true in music. It's true in dance. Every career has a certain max point which you have to find the next thing to do. And there's a nice book as well. It's from the same author called From Strength to Strength, where he talks about this. And I'll skip through this. So this is my last slide in a way. And what time is it? 10:50. So we have about 10 minutes if you want to ask any questions. And if you want that.
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
How can one choose a proper mentor?
How do you choose one? They happen actually, more than choosing one. You should look around and see what you're looking for, find people who would be able to advise you, guide you, these kinds. Yeah, so there's no real formula. Maybe some of you can comment how you find it. So I have been doing this with some very specific people. I somehow end up saying that, I find that I can respect them, then and spend time with them. They tell me something that is very useful. And I say, can I meet you often? And that's how it happens.
If I can share on the point of mentors. Personally, for me, it's not really been a pursuit of seeking and searching for mentors. It's more a question of having a lot of thoughts in your mind and seeking people who can perhaps help you to clarify them. And some of these relationships graduate towards being a mentoring relationship.
Yeah, good point. The only comment I would make is that each one of you should have a listed list of half a dozen people who are in that category. More often than not, it's all by happenstance rather than by design. So you should design it and have a list and okay, here are the half a dozen people that I think are in my mentor category. Some of them are maybe for technology, some maybe for business, some maybe for family, whatever it is. But having that clarity is very useful. Any other questions? I know we have taken questions through the session, so we don't have to have questions now, but if you have any, then we have good moments.
So you had mentioned having like the steps to reach your corner office in your the 30 years of your life. But then comes the step of being an expert in your previous 10 years.
Yeah.
And then before that comes the part of learning and identifying what you're good at. So why not start early and figure out what you're really good at before you decide on what an expert you want to be in?
Yeah, very good question. So the reality is that you really don't know what you're good at because you haven't seen enough of the world. So if I take a 25-year-old and say, or say someone who was just, so you see this all the time, even at companies like that. So somebody will come out of graduation and will say, no, I just want to do .NET. You haven't seen, there's so many other things, you have only learned .NET. Why are you so stuck on that? So what happens is that if you try to force yourselves into a corner very early on, then you are boxed into that corner without knowing where the world is. What I'm saying is that, even if you wanted to, except for being your own startup, getting a sort of a corner office very early is pretty hard to get in most large companies. So, some of these things will happen. But the reality is that I believe that in the early years, broader exposure is much better than very narrow exposure. And I go all the way to saying that even in colleges, see, you're going to work for as I said earlier, you'll be working from the age of 20 to 75, 80, 55, 60 years. We don't know what is coming. So the narrower you get, the more chance of getting into a box where you may not find anything happen. So broader exposure, getting to know people, learning from other people, learning to learn and learning many things will help you figure out what might be most relevant when it happens. We don't know what that might be. Yeah.
I just want to add that. Yeah, just want to add to that. It's also your earlier point around expertise having shorter and shorter shelf lives, right? So as things change, it's no longer only about learning about a particular thing. It's being able to figure out ways to work with the systems that you talked about rather than goals. Similarly, it's systems around learning in areas rather than specific knowledge. So the more you have breadth of understanding of how to work on different areas, then you can focus in later. I know that works.
Thank you. You have a question?
Yeah, when we talk about learning, what should be the limit of that?
There is no limit.
There is no limit.
It's as much as we can absorb.
Even in the first stage of the career, there are a lot of stuff to learn. So,
no, that's not true.
okay.
You have stuff to learn for the rest of your life.
Like there are many areas, like many domains.
So I'll always remain that. No, but this is reality, right? Two things why I say that. The universe of learning or what you can learn is so vast that you'll never complete to learn everything in your lifetime. It's not possible. Nobody is going to learn everything that is there. You're going to pick and choose what you can learn. And what you learn will be a very small fraction of the learning that can be done. So this is one important thing. Second thing is that there are things you will learn, things you know how to figure out very quickly, which is more important at times. I don't know this, but I know how to get to that. I know where to start, I know who to ask, I know how to get to that. That is very valuable. So those are again two things. But this will not end at any point in your life. The day you stop learning, you are done.
So it's like if we have to do something, we should learn until that point.
No, you should always be learning. But let me give you a slightly different twist on this, which may be relevant for what you're asking. So as I said, you can be learning something forever. So you'll never be done. That is also true. But you need to create some milestones, some gates, and saying that okay, by this date I will have enough to be able to make this level of conversation. I don't know everything, but I know enough to assimilate what I have, and I can create a story around it. And that story now I can pack it and reuse it when I need it. So you need to create these sort of boundaries of saying that okay, I have learned it, I've checkpointed it at a certain point. And that checkpoint then is useful for you to go on. Because you're right, if you can learn all the time, you will always be learning the same thing and you'll never be done. The exhaust of learning that you can learn from is so broad that it is impossible to figure out when to stop.
Yeah, yes. Thanks.
So what I do typically is that I sign up for somebody telling me, oh, I have this talk somewhere. I say, okay, fine, I'll pick some new topic and talk about it. So then that forces me to get it down to a set of story or this that. So I have a set of things that I will prepare, which I then now I have something I can talk about. And then that's a starting point. When you start talking about it, people tell you more things and you build on it. Yeah, you have a question.
Yeah, see, how does Gen I or these disruptive technologies change?
Okay, so here's what I think, right? So one, of course, is that AI is going to affect all walks of life in all industries. So first good news is that if AI is going to make it possible for every school child in the country to have access to learning and this and that, everyone should have healthcare. This is all going to happen, but who's going to make it happen? We need some programmers to make it happen. So that's the good news part. So there is a lot of AI that is going to happen, and you all can make it happen. That's the good news. The second thing I can say for sure is now AI is going to write better code than you, 100%. So if you plan to work on just being a coder, you can't compete with it. So there's a story I want to share with you which is kind of related to this. And the earlier you accept the fact that AI will be a better coder than you, the better off you are. So you have to learn how to deal with AI. The AI is going to write better code than you. So you have to do something other than just write. That's the corollary to it. And the example I want to share with you is about chess. So if you think about chess, right? So in 1989, Deep Blue lost to Kasparov. But in 97, Deep Blue was the second one. The first one was, I think, some other name. Deep Think or Deep Thought. So Deep Thought beat Kasparov. Kasparov defeated that in 89. In 97, pretty much Deep Blue beat Kasparov. And from 2000 onwards, pretty much chess engines, as they call it now, beat humans. Today, the Stockfish rating is about 38 and 80 for its Elo ranking. Magnus at its best has been 28. So 100% of the time, human versus computer, computers win. 100%. For all that. All chess players, so in the mid 2005-07, I remember, there was a lot of debate going on where what is that player to play chess anymore? Why would you play with humans? You always play with the computer. Computer is going to beat you every single time. Chess. But today, if you think about how chess is played and how they are playing, the games that they are playing, the moves they are making, are very different from the moves that they would have made 25 years before the AI revolution. And everyone accepts that chess, every player is going to lose with AI, everyone uses AI all the time to prepare for the games. So they have learned to live with chess. Chess today is far more flourishing, exciting, and quite different from chess of the 20 years. Become a spectator sport. I'm sure you guys watch it. Chess Base India has done an amazing job. So yes, so people have accepted that. So like this, I think programmers need to accept the fact that AI is going to be a better programmer than you. You cannot beat the AI on programming. So you have to learn how to deal with it. So this is the second thing I would say. The third thing is that I think agentic AI is going to be the real transformation. So the way I see it is that the co-pilots that people talk about are trying to improve performance of individual programmers or factory workers by a certain percentage, 20%, 30%. By writing AI factories, you can completely get rid of all the people because there will be agents doing the work, and you can build factories far more efficiently, exponential improvements in performance as compared to co-pilots. So all that is happening on co-pilots is only, in my opinion, a very short-term benefit. Eventually, there will be no value of co-pilots because people will use AI to build factories of the future rather than just factory workers be more efficient. So this is the thing. The fourth thing I think is that when we look at AI, the biggest challenge in some sense is the digital divide. So the haves versus the have-nots. If you look at AI right now, it's controlled by a very small number of companies in two countries, China and US. Everyone else is not quite there. So access to GPUs, this, that, everything. It's going to be a huge challenge because it's not that easy to. On one side, we say that AI is going to democratize AI, but on the other hand, it's not that easy. So the divide between the haves and have-nots at various axes such as access, maybe energy, knowledge, to all kinds of things will become very stark. So I think that's something that I worry about. And then finally, I don't know how many of you have read Nexus from Yuval. It's worth reading here. Okay. But he has one of the most negative pictures that you can see about how AI is going to destroy our civilization. Okay. And if you hear Jeffrey Hinton, and he did a whole bunch of talks around the Nobel Prize that he won. Recently, in December, he was in Sweden. November, December, if you Google around, look for Jeffrey Hinton's talks in the Nobel Prize contest. Again, very negative about AI. So AI can create some disastrous consequences for sure, and I think it'll be important for us to kind of track it and manage. And it's not clear what the verdict is. So just to summarize, these are 5 things that I've been saying to people right now. One is AI is fantastic; it can do amazing things, and people like you have the opportunity to make that happen. So that's the exciting part. Second part, of course, is I think AI is going to write better code than you. You have to figure out how to get AI to write the code that you want it to write. So there's a lot of things you have to do, but they are different from what you may have done in the past. So that's the second thing. Third, I think agentic AI is the future. And AI agents and agentic AI is definitely going to happen. And as a company, I think you guys should invest in this big time because this is really the future. The fourth thing is I worry about the digital divide or the divide that AI is going to create. And finally, the fifth thing I say is that, it's still not clear how disastrous these effects can be. We have to watch and be very responsible in terms of using AI because AI can go crazy. And, it could happen faster than we think. That's pretty much it. Anything else you want to ask?
Sir, I have one more question.
So,
Yes, sir.
see.
Sir,
Okay.
so generally that with that the ethic roles like AI is going to we are becoming a less important and AI is becoming a really important. So are we?
I don't quite say that, but go on.
Yeah, but are we only looking at the scope of having a prompt engineer or still?
No, prompt engineering is done. That was 2 years back.
So it's
Last 2 years back, people were doing prompt engineering. Then moved to Copilot driven whatever. Now everything is agentic. Yeah.
so at one point it is going to replace the employer's assets.
I want to use that word replace a little carefully, but what I can say is that you can build amazing systems that require very few humans to do end-to-end work if you think very differently using AI. And that I think you should see as an opportunity for your company.
So we can see actually some weekly and monthly like we are getting new opportunities like new applications in AI. So which one should actually like quite confused which one should we use? Like what is the importance? Daily we are getting some prompts of new things that is done in AI. So for example you mentioned notebook in LLM. So similar we had another application to keep the notes track note. So we have much of a
So what I'm saying is that right now the future of where you guys should think about is agentic AI. Now what is agentic AI is a different topic. I don't want to get into it today, but you can spend some time thinking about it. But what you should do is, here's what you need to think about. You need to think about end-to-end. So if you are trying to take a process, let's say you are in the construction area, which is one of your areas, instead of trying to see how to improve the performance of each of the worker on the construction software or ecosystem, trying to figure out how would you optimize the end-to-end process by putting in the right number of agents at various places which are autonomous. They are thinking, and how do you verify them, and how do you put it all together so that you can create an end-to-end AI-driven system. That is sort of where it's going to go. So if I want to design this room, right, what furniture do I need? What all do I need? The agent will go and find out the catalog of furniture. It will give you back prices. It will give you choices. And you say, okay, which chair do you want to use? This one, this one, this one. So these systems will use technology which will go on its own and do many things. You have to orchestrate them together. The world is just definitely changing very dramatically using it. Okay, we need to stop here. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to wish you all the very best. I hope you invite me on your 50th anniversary. I'm still around to make it here. But it will be good. Wish you all the very best. Thank you.
very much. I mean, a couple of years back in 2023, there was a talk that Anand had given at NASCOM, which was on growth, the second orbit. And of course, Jayan I had a privilege of a 2-hour session, which was extremely inspiring. Jayan had the privilege of a 2-day session, which is eventually what led to Anand being able to be here today, and we're very grateful to you for coming here. What strikes my mind is the complete contrast and difference between the session we had there on that particular day and what is more appropriate for this audience here today, which I think was wonderfully done, and he really is, in a very beautiful way, given the picture in terms of career growth, the 4 stages in career growth, very, very remarkably done. Beyond the 4 stages in career growth, one takeaway for me really is the aspect they talked about, which is a different way of putting the lifestyle balance, with work and lifestyle balance, which is really looking at the 4 quadrants, which is about me, my family, my work, and my community. And also the aspect that he talked about, which is really in terms of the balance that you choose in each of these, the choice that each individual makes, and the implications of that is that we either enjoy or suffer from. I just want to let you know that we will be continuing the session with Anand, and he's been gracious to spend more time with us. The next session that we get into is something that I'm going to be eventually using, and I'll come to that at the end of it, to provoke Anand to remember us all by. And he said that if you need to remember us, you need to say something which is very provocative. Not provocative, but something that provokes his thinking. I'll come to that. But the session that we're going to be doing next is really where it's a continuation of, I think, what Anand did for a smaller group here earlier, which is really in terms of how do we as a company leapfrog? How do we really go beyond what we are doing now, which is, I think, very good. We have really established growth, but we are not really kind of gone in what he calls the next S-curve, what he calls the second orbit. And how do we really get to that? We would really want to, so what we're planning to do next is really to get into a little bit of a huddle session where we'll take up 4 different themes and then bounce it off to get expertise and thoughts from Anand. The themes being one about growth, how do we really kind of pitch forth and get much deeper growth. The second being really about, I talked about a little bit today, the changing landscape of technology and that space of the discussion. The third really being about delivery excellence, how do we really kind of provide much better to our customers, how do we at scale start providing much higher quality of deliverables. And the fourth really being about people, which is really about how do we attract, retain good talent, how do we build a very high performance culture within the organization. So these are 4 topics we thought we will quickly try and pick from that. And here's what I want to kind of let Anand know, that we are looking at this session and the benefit of having a shared session with everybody as a point where we are really wanting to kind of use as a catalyst to really start making that big jump. So we are committing to you that this is not a session that we're just taking as one of those talks. And in the next 3 years, you will see a change. And it will not be 3 years when we come back to you. You don't need to respond, but we will frequently write to you in terms of what's happening so that you're in the know of things. But we really thank you very much for this opportunity of coming and sharing with us, which has been very impactful for all of us. And I really deeply thank you for not just the session that you shared with all of us, but the 2 sessions that are to follow, one which I just described, and the second, which is a shorter session at the end of it with the leader community from the industry in Toronto. Anand, thank you once again. Just quickly, I also want to be known that the session that we were planning next is something that we were planning. We were planning a workshop, and Shankar was kind enough to kind of lead that workshop, which we'll continue to do. So we'll start today, but we will hopefully take Shankar's help and then carry that forward so that we make very clear, concrete plans in terms of how do we want to go ahead, so that the next year we start off with very concrete, crystallized plans for ourselves. This is just for everybody's information. And thank you again, Shankar, as well. Thank you.